our speaker today is by my personal invitation because Harry McDonald he's worked with kids throughout his career, a band teacher, band leader, school counselor. He's also written books, and so, but more importantly, he is an amazing spiritual teacher, as some of us in this room can attest. So I asked him to come today and just kind of weigh the Course in Miracles principles with the unity principles, and to see where they maybe, might meld, maybe not, but how we can coexist in using both of these teachings to, just kind of embrace our spirituality and to move forward in our spirituality. So one of the I've been a Course in Miracles teacher for quite a long time, student for quite a long time, and when I went to Phoenix to do one of our unity classes, one of the ministers there talked about co-belonging, because she was a Buddhist and a unity minister. Everyone's like, how do you do that? And she says, called co-belonging. The thing is, you don't want to try and make them the same. You use both, you see both of them as beneficial. And I know a lot of us in this room do that with a lot of different teachings. Unity just happens to kind of put it all in a cool package. It's like it encompasses all the new thought teachings with so much love and reverence. And so, so Harry's been, for me, just an amazing spiritual teacher, a mentor, a counselor. And so I am very excited to have him here today and to share him with you guys. Harry?
Such a group, my gosh. I think with the songs and Judy, and we've probably already got the whole message already. It puts me in, I remember George, I think it was George Burns once said, the way to start a presentation is to have a good beginning and a good ending, and then put them as close together as possible. And it sounds like, especially with that last song, boy, they're pretty close together here, because I'll give you the spoiler alert, see, and then you can doze off if you want, which I don't think any of you people will, but the spoiler alert is they're pretty much the same. It's kind of like you've got one person and they wear different clothes sometimes, but it's still the same person. It's so you can debate about which clothes are better or more appropriate or make more sense. And you're really talking about yourself then anyway when you're doing that, because it makes sense for you. But basically, that's the big difference. So, that's it. Nope. I will go through these, and I tell you, I wasn't that familiar before Judy and sent me these. But I love the order of them. The order is just perfect, because it goes from the abstract of heaven to the everyday, and I think that is so neat. You guys obviously do all 5 of these things, so. But here we go as far as thinking about it with different clothes. The first one is, which you probably already know these, but there is only one presence and one power, active as the universe and in my life, God the good. So this is talking about the eternal God, the way God created them, including, as we go into number 2, us. So just picture what this is like. I mean, you get the sense of it when you do your meditations and listen to these holy songs and things. But get the picture of what heaven is like, because it's totally different than what we're used to. First of all, there's no bodies running around. It's spirit. Second of all, you could put all of heaven in this little room. And it also expands way past the whole universe. Way past the whole universe. And when somebody's born in heaven, when God creates a child, there wasn't a beginning. It was always there. Because that's the way eternal works. Eternal doesn't have a beginning and an ending. It's kind of like if you, if you got to the stage in mathematics where you took 4 apples and your partner got 3 apples and you had 7 apples, then together you counted them up and said, we have 7 apples now. But so later on you learn that, oh, you can have 40 apples and 30 apples, and then you have 70 apples. Well, that wasn't really new. It's just because of the way we look at it from where we are. So we're used to birth having a beginning and for our bodies having an ending. But when we're talking heaven, we're talking never beginning, never ending, but just being extended. It's always just being extended, just like with the 4 and 3 going to 40 and 30. It's just being extended. So heaven, wow, that's a stretch for us here. In fact, we might even have trouble, well, probably not you guys, but wrapping your mind around, this is a big, big, big deal. And there's no limit on God's children? No, there can't be, because eternal doesn't have limits. So we go on to number 2, because we're entering the picture. Our essence is of God, therefore we are eternally good. This God was fully expressed in Jesus the Christ. Okay, I happened to read this that Charles Fillmore said. Pretty neat, huh? Just found that. It says, no one has ever seen his real body as it is in the sight of God, except through the mind. The body of flesh, bones, and blood that the eye of sense behold is not the true body any more than the heart of flesh is the true organ of love. That which is born of the flesh is flesh. That which is born of the Spirit is spirit, quoting Paul. The flesh is a state of consciousness. The Spirit is a state of consciousness. So it's amazing. Not only is what A Course in Miracles saying similar to your 5 principles, but basically almost every mystic of the past they've all seen and said this same thing in different words. They all recognize that there's something way beyond just what walks around here and lives and grows and eventually dies. So that's pretty incredible. So our essence is of God, and we are inherently good. Well, we're inherently perfect. We're inherently this child of God that we have sometimes trouble wrapping our mind around. But along the way, something happened. And that brings us to number 3. Yay! See, this is going faster than we thought, right? We are co-creators with God, creating reality through thoughts held in mind. Okay, so this is the funny thing. Just for general information, if you don't mind, I always hate it when a person does this, but raise your mind if you've read some of A Course in Miracles. I know some of you. Oh, so okay, here we go. This is pretty good. So I remember the first time I was reading through it, which was in the old Foundation for Inner Peace blue book version. In fact, it was still in 3 different sections in that time. This was like 1978. Going through there, and all of a sudden it says, and your children in heaven. What? Where did this come from? What do you mean I have children in heaven? What is that all about? So there's no doubt that since we're created in the image and likeness of God, which number 2 is really talking about, we're created in the image and likeness of God, sharing God's total power of creation. Since we're in that particular place, it sets us up for, in heaven, we still got this going on, but something happened along the line here. Those of you that have studied the Bible before have heard all kinds of different things from the first 2 chapters of Genesis, that talk about that. And basically in the first chapter, it's kind of a spiritual creation. It's done by the Elohimists, which were actually after the Yahwehists who did the second chapter. I'm sure you're delighted to know that. The Yahwehists were the oldest makers of the Old Testament. And you couldn't even say Yahweh. So that was considered sacrilege to say that. But in the second chapter is where God breathes light into this mud and stuff, and man appears and takes a rib. Actually, that's not a good translation. Part of the side of Adam and makes Eve. And whereas the first chapter is very much like a spiritual creation. It doesn't talk about bodies or anything like that. So something happened along the line here that the mystics of the Old Testament could see and kind of figured out, well, in this computer age, we can figure it out kind of this way. You could have the world's most sophisticated computer, and if you put in all totally wrong information, it's going to come up with all kinds of answers, but there won't be the right ones. So it's like there's a thing for that called like garbage in, garbage out. So what happened, according to the course, and this, I got to say, this is not really an emphasis of the course. It's not. I'll tell you in a minute what its emphasis is about when we go to 4 and 5. But the main thing that we did, evidently, was we started thinking differently than God. And we forgot to laugh. Thank goodness you guys have never forgotten to laugh. That's a good one. So we started thinking differently from God, and not thinking to laugh means that we entertain those thoughts a little bit. Well, think of who we are as a child of God. As a child of God, we have these immense powers of creation. So, poof, the Big Bang. The Big Bang. If I saw a thing on Discovery Channel once with a physicist, and I asked me how they figured this out. They're way past apples. They're in the quantum realm. They're way past figuring out who's got the most apples and what it has if you combine them. So apples mathematics is out of the way, and there's some kind of energetic mathematics going on there. So, and he was saying that when the Big Bang started, at first things went way faster than the speed of light. And the guy that was interviewing says, but Einstein says nothing can go faster than the speed of light. And he says, that's it. Nothing can go faster than the speed of light. So nothing, when it first started out, was nothing from nothing. But eventually there was like oxygen and nitrogen, and those things were going. And then after that, I presume that it had to go at the speed of light. So you can think of that. Nothing goes faster than the speed of light in 2 different ways. That no thing can go faster than the speed of light. But nothing, being an illusion, can go faster than the speed of light. Because it isn't anything to start with. So, being the creators that we are, it was natural for us to make an expression of these thoughts that were separate from God. And then sometime after we did it, we forgot that we did it, and we instead became like the victim the victim of the world, you know. So this germ can get us, this cut can get us, this whatever, you know, this finances can get us, all these different things we have as fear thoughts. And so as we look around, it's interesting, there's 2 lessons in the course that I'll quote that have to do with this. The course, you know, if you haven't done it, it's really, I think, worth it for almost anybody just to do the lessons, because the lessons are really put things into your mind. So one of the very early lessons is that all you see is attack thoughts. And when you think about it, mostly we don't really, and I'm sure you guys don't mostly see attack thoughts because you're very loving people. But basically everything is separate. So, you know, it has the potential of going away, dying, doing things that would hurt us, has all, anyway. And then as you go on and like, I think it's lesson 44 or so, it says, God is in everything I see. God is in everything I see. So, that puts a whole different spin on it, because that's like they were talking about in the last thing. What you look at through love, you see in a different kind of way. So, and you allow for a different kind of thing. So, basically, as soon as we asked the question, or as soon as we settled on something, God created an answer. God made an answer. From God's standpoint, it's not making this real, but it's making this, it's answering the questions that evolve around this. And that was, according to Course, you don't have to believe any of this. Doesn't matter. That's when the Holy Spirit was made as an answer, because the Holy Spirit keeps God in mind and also knows that we have problems so that we get help. So that co-creators thing that we did in number 3, we are co-creators with God, goes on a couple of ways, and it has an expression here. It has an expression in this world, which 4 and 5 kind of go into. And that is, when you give unconditional love to somebody, your child or neighbor or whatever, you're in fact spreading this eternal that's always here. When you guilt somebody or when you do things to hurt somebody, you're in fact enforcing the separation from God's thoughts. And in those moments, you're not really thinking like God thinks for those moments. So you've kind of built the wall against God for just a minute there as you do that. As you change that to love, the Course calls it forgiveness. Then you're starting to think like God in a way that you can do here and now. So that's basically the whole way of that the Course in Miracles, and what it's really interested in, is learning to think like God, and it calls it forgiveness. It calls it seeing the Christ in others, because the Christ is really, when we say Jesus the Christ, we're talking Jesus exemplified the child of God perfectly. So anyway, that's the whole thing that we're working on. So we need number 4, which says, through prayer and meditation we align our heart with God. Denials and affirmations are tools that we use. And I imagine all of you guys are expert at this. All of us just have to remember to do it and not think, well, I'm correct in this. I'm really right. I can hold this belief. No, not if you want to, unless you want to have a wall, you don't. Because you want to turn it over and see it as God sees it. You want to see the Christ in somebody else. That's what you want to do. Those that are around me very long know that I do this a lot. Judian's already laughing, because that means love from you to others and back to you, and it's a cycle. It's a reinforcing cycle. So in prayer and meditation, also the Course says about prayer, that we're praying all the time, every moment. We can't stop praying. We're always praying. Does unity say that? I don't know. Okay, so you're familiar with that idea. It's just that sometimes we're not praying to God. Sometimes we're praying that our wrong judgment of somebody is correct. But when we change to love, this is it's the Course in Miracles. And that's because if you think about it, for some people, in order to forgive them, it's going to take a miracle. And so that's why it has to be a Course in Miracles. And as soon as you start even generating the neutral place, as soon as you start generating this thing saying, okay, I'm going to let that go. I'm going to let that go. It reminds me of an old song Janie and I used to heard. It just popped into my mind from 40 or so years ago. It said a lot. I have decided I'm going to live like a believer, turn my back on the deceiver. I'm going to live a better way. And that's basically what we're doing, when we do that. And meditation is a great way to quiet the mind and put something different in there. Usually, at least this is true for me, like whatever the lesson is, it's good to have that thought going in my mind. And then I like to take it from saying it to feeling it. And just feel, what does that mean when you feel it then? You want it, it's gone past just words, because sometimes words don't really mean much to us. And then to being it, living it. And that's when you get up. When you've quit the meditation, you get up because you're being it. So you're letting that cycle, there it goes again. You're letting that cycle of love work. Okay, so those are the tools. There's no difference there that I can see. I need to back up just on one thing. Judy loaned me a book, which was really good. And this happens in Course in Miracles too, so it's really not that much of a difference. But it said in under number 2, if I can regress for a second, it said, we are God. But the Course in its substance never supports that. Never, never. Even though we're an extension of God and we're part of God, God is always the cause and we're the effect. God is always the initial creator. God is the is. God is. And we are letting that effect flow through us and extend us. And then we extend that evidently to our creations in heaven and to the good things that we do here. So anyway, but that may be just a small thing. And in Course circles, that's considered by some students, but it's not considered by most teachers. So, we go on to number 5. Sorry for that regression. Number 5 is, through thoughts, words, and actions, we live the truth we know. And that's the action part of this thing, which that's the going out and living it, and like I said, saying, feeling, being. When you get to the point of being, you want to be out and you want to be extending it. It's that extension of love. You always want to be sure that you're extending love. Now, here's the tricky part. I haven't gone too long, have I? Okay, just a few more seconds here. That's what makes the change in us. It reminds me of an old story about this well-known guru was going out and he saw this, he was hungry and he saw this stand that was serving food, and they had a menu item that he really liked, and it was like $10.95. And so looked in his pocket and he had a $20 bill. So he ordered it and gave the guy a $20 bill. And so he says finally to the guy, because he wasn't doing anything after the food, and he said, "Don't I have some change coming?" And he says, "Oh, master, change is from within." That was a pretty smart seller, I think. So, this is where we go out, and the Course talks about that there's a plan, an atonement plan, which is a plan of undoing and making, in fact, making things like God makes them, and reflecting that here. Reflecting that here. So even though there's a non-duality in heaven, here we don't quite believe it yet. So it's important in Course thought to really look at what it is that you're thinking. Really look at it closely. And it even has some parts that have to do with idols. And it says in those, in general terms, that we make idols out of things. In other words, we put some things in the place of God, which is a very interesting thing. Because the things that, if you think about it, we have to have this or we might die. We have to have that or we might die. We have to have this proper nutrition, this specific kind of financial information. We have to, and on our little list goes. We have to have a certain kind of house, a certain kind of partner in life. We have all of these things. And he says we have to be careful not to make that an idol. And in relationships, the Course calls things that we make conditionally with other people special relationships. If it has a condition attached to it, it's a special relationship. But we can allow those to be made into holy relationships, which basically means that we're entering the classroom of unconditional love. So we get to do that, and that would be part of our extension. And when we're doing this atonement plan, we're basically making heaven out of earth. You know, when you think about the Lord's Prayer, as I'm sure you do regularly, you know, it has the address, dear. You have to put the right postmark on it. Dear Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, you know. And your kingdom come. And then it says, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Which kind of lets us know, okay, well, your will isn't normally done here on earth. People are hurting people. People do things to people. There's all kinds of stuff going on. But we're asking for your will to be done in heaven. And we're asking for it actually to be done through us. Because it goes on to say, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. So you can't ask to be forgiven. In fact, the New Testament, those of you that have gone through that, is full of things like that. The four Gospels. And Paul's writings too. Jesus says in Matthew and Luke, he says, you know, if you've come to pray and you're holding something against your brother or against someone, go back and fix it with your brother and then come pray. So this is not a new thing, this path that you guys are all on, working towards forgiveness. It's not a new thing. It's just an adventure. It's just that you can't plan it all out. It's just an adventure. Thank you for having me. Oh, I got to do a meditation, right? Oh, good. I almost forgot about that. Okay, this is going to be a short meditation in which you will get union with God, and then we'll call it a quits for that part. In fact, here's what I would like you to practice for, say 2 minutes. I'll just say amen at the end of it. And that is, quiet yourself, use your breathing, however you're used to doing that. And then think of the things that you're holding against anybody and give them to God. Just give them away. Give them away. I'm not going to keep this anymore. I have decided. Here we go. Amen and thank you.